People who give job interviews, what are some subtle red flags that say, this person won't be a good hire?
I once had a guy show up, late, with blood all over his face and clothes looking really disheveled. Typically, I don't waste my time with people who can't even make it to their interview on time. But this guy said that he was in a car accident on his way to the interview and got there as soon as he could. After the interview, he asked if there was any way he could get a ride back to where his car was. Believing his story, I offered him the ride. This man's car was nearly 5 miles away, legitimately crashed, and it turns out someone had broken into his car and stolen his child's car seat and his stereo system during the couple hours he was gone. I hired him. He turned out to be really difficult to work with, but the guy was a programming genius. Kept him for years before he moved on. I don't hire liars. This guy wasn't one.
When asked about their experience with a topic, they stick to reciting textbook definitions of terminology rather than demonstrating any understanding of how to apply it. Had one person who was literally forwarding our questions into ChatGPT and then reciting rambling answers that provided definitions of keywords in our questions rather than actually answering the question. Like, we'd ask what something a previous employer or educator has recognized you for, and they'd answer, examples of things that an employer might recognize an employee for are.
What made you gain a significant amount of weight?
Car accident, wasn't at fault. Had to break away my life during my prime and take care of her full time and move back home with no other family to assist. We tried care facilities but gave her severe mistreatment, to the point lawyers got involved. Got depressed from having to spend all my time working from home with full-time care, bathing, toilet, food, paying for aides when out of town, etc., and keeping up with medical expenses. It's mixed feelings. I clearly cared about her, but it was excruciating trying to think about dating or do anything having to explain why you still live with a parent and can't give them my all. She ended up passing away after 3 years from the injuries and infections from the care facilities that persisted. Won the court case, but not until she died. In a better place, but the stress from all that definitely made me gain weight.
Pregnancy was the first one. Went from 160 pounds to about 180 pounds. Never really lost the weight. Depression was next. Went from 180 pounds to 230 pounds in a year way back because I spent all my time in bed, drinking Pepsi, with Reddit in my face on my laptop. I was in a really bad way. Got back down to 190 with the help of folks in r/Losiet. Met a guy, married him. Years later was back around 200 pounds, but whatever, I've always been chunky. Then I got a hysterectomy and it broke me. After the hysterectomy I was diagnosed with hypertension, became pre-diabetic, and shot up to 240 pounds. Been fighting that 240 for maybe 2 years now. Currently sitting at 225 thanks to my job, which is fairly active. Still battling the setbacks from the hypertension and prediabetes.
Stopping breastfeeding wrecked my body. No one warns you that your metabolism irreversibly changes. I lost the pregnancy weight in the 6 months that I breastfeed, and when I stopped my body gained 30 pounds in just 4 months. I worked hard to get it off, but it wasn't budging. It's like having a permanent plateau. I'm so jealous of people who can go to the gym and work it off or change their diet and melt it off. I change my routine and my body hits the deck. Red alert. The ship is going down. Reserve fuel, she's dying.
You are reborn with all your memories and full self-awareness. You are going to have to repeat this life. What would you do?
I don't know. My son died at 4 of an incredibly rare brain cancer. If I could go back and conceive him a day or two either side, so basically conceive someone totally different, And my wife would be none the wiser, would I? I loved him dearly, I still do, but he is only a memory now. There is and was no cure for what he had, DPG. It's not genetic, just bad luck. No reason to think any other siblings would have it, or at least no more likely than anyone else, incredibly rare. So if I could go back, and not have him, but instead have another child at about the same time, who would now be 10 and not a memory. And not have my wife ever have to go through any of the pain of watching a child fade away and die. Yeah, I think I would. The memory of him would still be with me, but that's all there is now anyway. I'd save her from all of it. Yeah, I think I would.
I don't know. That's a really hard question. The first 20 years of my life was shit. But these last 15 have been amazing now that I've been able to be fully independent. I'm so thankful for the life I have now that I wouldn't have if I hadn't gone through my tough beginnings. But if I could do that again, especially since I know it wouldn't be the same with the knowledge I have now, meaning I wouldn't be guaranteed the life I love now. I wouldn't mind a couple redo spots to reduce my nightly cringe playback. But I don't think I'd want to start over.
What did you do during your free time before the rise of social media, instead of scrolling through social networks?
Read all the time. I read everything, books, newspapers cover to cover, at least half a dozen magazines. I even collected role-playing games as a hobby so I could read the rules and source books even though I probably wouldn't ever play them. Of course, now I possess tons of useless knowledge about tabletop role-playing games from the 80s and 90s no one ever heard of. Like, do you know that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Robotech had role-playing games using the same rule set? Like, you could have a mutant squirrel flying around in Veritech Fighters? And in the 90s, thanks to the popularity of Shadowrun, cross-genre games were huge. One of the most interesting was a weird little game called Torg.
Never got into scrolling through social even when I was younger. Now that I'm older with more responsibilities, I still don't do it that much. Anyways, I did a lot of gaming. Was quite good on Call of Duty, so I spent a lot of time on majority of the Black Ops series with friends in real life and virtually. Overall, it was a really fun time in my life, so I don't regret it entirely other than knowing I can have been way more productive towards my future. Not doing bad now, but definitely could have been in this position 5 years ago.
EU countries are starting to float the idea of sending troops to Greenland for defensive purpose. US military members, what would you do if your president ordered the invasion of Denmark?
Anybody who voted for Trump and supports the annexation or invasion of another country thinking it will be good for the United States or good for the other country is completely lost. Those people have completely thrown away independent thinking in favor of unconditional subservience to Donald Trump. You can be on board with some of his policies, but nobody should be okay with these ideas. Some Trump supporters are far too willing to blindly follow. You should not blindly support any politician. You need to judge and support them based on each individual decision they make, because no matter how good a politician might seem to you, they will still make some bad decisions from time to time.
It would be a cluster. I think people assume that we would just form an army up and invade D-Day. Reality is that 200 soldiers there that would immediately have to surrender. Not to mention a lot of EU military bases being surrounded and locked down that have US personnel in them. We take Greenland, so what? You think the public is going to tolerate the thousands of US personnel now potential POWs for nothing more than Trump's ego? I assume that all the military has been working around the clock to show him how stupid it would be to perform any military action against a NATO ally.
The US might take Greenland, but imagine the geopolitical outlook and what effect it would have on the Dow. NATO is gone, maybe EU threatens to make a pact with China as they can't trust the US. The New World Order would be gone. Every treaty on the planet would be up for grabs. The stock market would collapse as badly as the start of COVID. Trump wouldn't want to be blamed for all that. I think it is bluster and keeping people's eyes of his other moves.
What's the hottest thing your partner does unconsciously?
Walk around in her plush comfy robe in the evenings after her shower without a single thing underneath. Sitting at the edge of the couch plucking her eyebrows using one of those little portable circular vanity mirrors, opening her mouth slightly every time she goes in. Asking where her bifocals are at, placing them on, then putting her hair up in business mode like fashion, then sitting cross-legged before she starts paying bills and updating her finances / browsing online or when reading. Walks up smiling whenever she sees me grazing / snacking, then makes this MMPH type noise saying watching me eat gives her the anxious, before biting my shoulder and walking off. Starts bopping around and shoulder shimming whenever music is playing. Tells me not to waste money unnecessarily whenever I get excited about ordering out to try some new place, saying you don't have to try to impress me anymore, you already got me, before kissing me and frolicking off to make some simple-ass dinner. Sleeps in the nude and rolls over up close, pressing herself up against me for warmth when she gets chilly. Snores like a friggin' wildebeest, which ick why, but I find it sexy knowing she's resting well. Ick how many of those are done completely unconsciously, but damn, the woman turns me the fuck on at every turn. She sleepwalks and turns up the thermostat to 90, which is pretty hot.
He's thoughtlessly kind to the people around him. Cooks extra food to offer to a sick neighbor, notices something broken in someone's home and offers to fix it, sees someone drop something and immediately moves to help pick it up, and so many other examples. It extends to me as well, but seeing him give that same care and consideration to the people around him that offer him no benefit or reiteration is unbelievably attractive.
What's the most scariest, or the most brutal way of dying?
Recently I had pneumonia and fluid on the lung. I got very severely unwell and I felt like I was drowning in my own body. I'd taken deep breaths gasping for air. Then my lungs would bubble inside and I would cough up blood as I tried to breathe. Having a tube placed down your throat before they've had time to sedate you is terrifying. I don't remember a lot about the weeks that followed. But that last horrifying breath in and the bubbles rising in my lungs is one of the most haunting feelings. I would have hated for it to have been my last moment alive. I'm sure there are much more brutal ways to die. I've been close to death after particularly brutal attacks. Yet that somehow felt so different to drowning in my own body.
Late stages of bowel cancer and untreated breast cancer. Don't look it up. VAD should be legal everywhere. Just because of these wonderful options. Basically, with late-stage bowel cancer, you can get an obstruction in the bowel, and it then means the poor person then is not able to evacuate their bowels. In the end stages, the person is not strong enough to have an operation to remove the obstruction, so it has to remain. Even though they can have nil by mouth, the body still makes about 250 g of waste every 24 hours. Where does the fecal matter go? Out of the person's mouth. So yeah, VAD all the way.
Being stabbed to death or drowning, a gunshot it's quick. Stabbing is slow and torturous. Drowning is you just see your life flash before your eyes while your entire body fills up with water until everything goes black. My uncle unfortunately drowned, and when they found him he went from over 150 or 175 pounds to 300 pounds, and that's because it was filled with water.
I once saw a video on LifeLeak where a desperate drug addict forced a cop to shoot him by running with a knife towards the officer. He pumped about 5 bullets into the chest and you could see smoke emerging from his mouth and you could hear him gurgle blood for some solid minutes. I can imagine that this is some sick way to bite the dust, which I never want to experience. Rather a bullet to the brain than this.
Any kind of neurological degenerative disease. Motor neuron disease, Huntington's and prion disease can just happen randomly or without any actual cause other than some random mutation. That's the scariest diseases, honestly. There's also getting stuck while stranded and alone, slowly dying from dehydration. Extra points if it was deep underwater or in a cave.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to my channel.